Welcome back to another episode of Keoni Chats. It's been a very long time since I've sat in front of this camera and gave an introduction to an episode, as the last time I did that was for Jake Island's episode, and immediately following that introduction recording, I packed up the last bit of my things and moved into my own apartment. So for the last year and a half, I've been living with my brother, who is pictured over my left shoulder, and honestly, that was the best year and a half of my life, just because I've gone through some heartache. I've gone through some growth. I've started a new passion. And I believe that my bond with my brother did get stronger. I'm an emotional wreck sometimes, or I'm just very emotional. And he is not. So it was fun to have that kind of back and forth. But I knew that if I wanted to continue this career, I needed my own space. I needed to separate the podcast studio from the bedroom because I felt so confined. Everything was kind of jammed into this very small square. And I remember after everything was packed out, I just remember seeing the room, and it was so much smaller. It felt so much bigger because the amount of the maze it had to go through from point A to point B within that room felt so much longer. So it was, oh man, it's also extremely stressful. If you have moved at any point in your life, you know how stressful it is. You know how anxiety-ridden it is. You know how much you overthink. And I knew that I somehow pushed through. I knew that there was no way I could get an episode recorded and released within that time frame. So I knew as soon as I got done with that recording for Jake Island's intro, I was like, that's it. That's it for about 2 weeks. And then here we go. New stop. So you'll see I don't have a whole lot going on in my backdrop. It's not as entertaining as the last one was, but it's fine. I honestly think it's fine. And it's going to be different. And everything that you go through in life that has to do with change or some sort of big life movement, it's going to be different for a while. So testing this out, obviously you can see that the mic that I use for my interviews is back as my intro, because I have noticed that the lapel mic I was using, it does have a different audio sound to it than the actual mic I'm using for my interviews. So I want to make sure that consistency is back. And so the episode you are checking into, it's with David Rodriguez, as you might have seen. And this was not my first in-person interview, but my first in-person interview that got released to the public. So I did do an in-person interview very early on in my podcasting stage. And the audio equipment I was using was absolute bare minimum, because I was just starting out. I didn't know exactly what I need or how I can get what I need. So I thought this $20 mic should work, right? So I my interviewing skills also wasn't as great as it is now, because obviously not enough practice, not enough polish time. And I didn't want that to be this person's story. I didn't want an interview that was way too structured, and one interview that was way too poor in the audio quality to be out in the public for this person's story. So this is the unofficially, but officially the first in-person interview that is going to have an in-person interview episode. And he was very adamant about it. He very much wanted that he and I talk in person. And it was I've known David for almost my whole life. And the topics we talked about, it was something that I never thought I'd hear him talk about. So because anytime we would see each other, it's to, let's say in college, oh, let's go to the bars, let's go to this party, let's go have some fun here, blah, blah, blah. So we never had a chance to really sit down and talk about the world and his mental health and just other things like that. So it was very lightning. It was very much, I enjoyed it. It was very fun. So who knows? That did open the door for some possibilities for potential in-house guests as well. So before I send you off to that episode or that interview, the audio. So with this being, again, the first in-person episode that is going in-person interview, that's going to be a little bit of a tongue twister. For this being the first in-person interview that gets released to the public, there were some technical difficulties. In the very beginning, I was very much hard on myself when it came to making sure I could actually hear David's microphone, and then you'll hear in the episode exactly what the resolution was. And also, the camera I'm using right now to record this intro, it was used for David's camera. And the second camera that was used for my own, it was my phone, because I wasn't 100% sure how long the interview was going to go, and I did have access to a second camcorder, but that max time was about an hour and 20. So I knew that my phone could last longer because I used it in the very beginnings when I started introducing that second camera angle, and it stopped about an hour into the interview. So if you're listening to this episode, then you're going to be fine. You won't notice a difference at all. But if you are watching on YouTube, you will see that about the last 20 or 30 so minutes, you'll just see David. Or I'll throw in some photos to kind of break it up, but you'll just see David. So, and that's fine, because it's about David. It's not about me. If you're a fan of the show, you'll know that I'm always going to be here. I'm always going to be the host. So I didn't really need I think that's fine. I think that's fine. And I did mention during Jake's intro that mock draft is on the horizon, and the mock draft has arrived. So if you go to my website, keoniconlu.com, KEONICONLU.com, and you go to, if you're on your mobile phone, then go to hit menu. But if you're on a laptop or a computer, just click on blogs, and then there is a mock draft tab. Click on that. You'll go to the 2020 mock draft that I did last year, and then maybe one and done 2021 mock draft. Who knows? We'll see. So, yeah, check that out. Let me know what you think. I'm very open to hearing some. When it comes to NFL, I love having NFL conversations. So if you're enjoying content from KC Media, follow us on social media. That's going to be KC Media 13 on both Instagram and Twitter, Conlu K Media on Facebook, and you can find the video versions of each episode on YouTube under Keoni Chats. However you are listening to this episode, through whichever platform you prefer, or if you are watching this on YouTube, I hope you enjoy my chat with David Rodriguez. Okay.
Fancy.
Oh, fans of the Keoni Chats podcast. This is my first ever in-person interview, and what better way to have it than with my, those people that classify them as like, oh, you're friends, you're very close, you're like a brother. This is one of my brothers. So David Rodriguez, good friend and overall big part of my life. Thank you for coming on the show. I mean, it was kind of a crap show in the beginning because the mic wasn't on, and I was really frustrated. But luckily, you caffeined up. How you feeling?
Feel good. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to do this with you.
Yes. We had a little bit of a turbulent to try to get here today because, originally like, oh, we should do this on your birthday weekend. Obviously, I think I was just being too optimistic, where I was just like, oh, yeah, we're going to have some time. This is going to be great. And then I was like, wait a minute, he's also celebrating, so that's probably not the best time. But and then the following weekend was a snowstorm, and Oregon had a pretty hefty snowstorm, and plus I live on a hill, so that was not a great fun time. But we're here, we made it, we're all settled. Do you feel the caffeine kicking in yet?
Yeah, I feel pretty good.
Yeah.
How are you feeling? You were pretty stressed out.
I was, I'm an ex-Boy Scout, so it's like I want to make sure I'm prepared. It's part of that motto. Ex-Boy Scout is kind of a lenient way because I never got the Eagle, but I was like, oh, why is this not working? And then, you give this great suggestion of turning on the mic. God damn it.
I'm just glad I could help.
We are recording live, and it's different because I'm used to doing this on the screen. You didn't want that. You're against that completely. Why is that?
I think that the conversations flow more naturally when you have someone in front of you. There's always internet connection problems. There's always a lag, and that doesn't help the whole conversation. So I there's nothing like having the personal connection, having someone next to you and just look at them and be able to, talk to them. I think that's been the biggest issue with COVID is we're all missing that human interaction. So,
yeah, but you've been safely, picking the moments when you go out to public. You live in downtown Portland now, so there's so many things where you can do, but very smart about it.
Yeah, we've been very cautious. You got to do your part, right? Even though it's been pretty awful to just always stay in, we have it pretty good. I mean, we can walk anywhere. We're healthy. So you just got to do your part, I guess.
Yeah. And that is our PSA for the day. Do your part, guys and gals. But yeah, so we're recording. We might get some cat cameos later. Who knows? My brother has 2 cats that might make an introduction. So, anywho. So when I asked you to come onto the show, I was very much like, I know this guy's life. He's very outgoing. He has all these personalities. But the main thing is just like, yeah, I just want to get your story out for like Spotify, iTunes, and all that, so people can learn more about you. So you're actually the first person that asked me, like, is this going to be like a Joe Rogan style? So what is it about Rogan's podcast that you like?
Well, I love and hate him because he challenges people. I think he does a good job at calling people out when they need to be called out. I also disagree with a lot of the stuff that he talks about, but that's part of it. You can't just only listen to the stuff you like. You got to be challenged and listen to things that may not go the way that you interpret things. He brings in really interesting people and people that have really good things to tell the world that don't have a voice, and he does that for them. And I mean, in a small scale, that's what you're doing. You bring in people in that have a pretty interesting story, that have pretty interesting lives, and you give them a platform to get the word out. Yeah,
and so many people I talk to, this is their first time, so they're like, "Oh, you want me on your, you want me as a podcast guest?" I've only listened to it. I've never been a part of it. It's for me, I was like, "Oh, it's such a celebrity thing, such like a high profile thing where." Let's say I'm in a movie and then I bring you on because you're also in that movie, and then we can always talk about that. We don't really get a chance to talk about the life things that people deal with. So,
what led you to do this style of podcast? Like, what was your thought behind that?
So, if you've kept up since the very beginning, so I'll voice this every single time, but it's trying to work through a breakup and trying to find yourself again, trying to rebuild yourself. That's what kind of led me down this path. And I had this crazy thing called a degree from University of Oregon for journalism communications, and I've been like staring at it, not like visually staring at it, but like also mentally staring at it to like, I really need to start using this. I didn't have a whole lot of experience leaving University of Oregon as far as like in the broadcasting studios or just a lot of stuff to put on a reel. So I was like, podcasting. Oh, actually, my original thought was like, let's get back to writing because that's how I started. But then I was like, podcasting is a new style of storytelling. So let's dive into that. And it also helps to have a job that'll pay nicely that can help me supplement that.
Yeah.
So help me grow in this passion. So
did you have a vision of how you wanted the podcast to go, or has it just kind of become a natural thing? Is like what it is now, it's just a natural way of being.
Like everyone has podcasts. Like I think thinking about my docket of people I'm going to talk with, it's like at least 3 or 4 of them have podcasts already. So it's like, I mean, it's great because there's no shortage of like things to dive into because let's say I listened to this podcast about mental health, and then I'm like, okay, well, I'm tired of that. Let's listen to a podcast about the NFL. Let's listen to something about someone that wants to start up their own company, but they're talking about how they're, being a beginner and how they're like trying to get okay with the idea of, going over all these challenges. So it's, for my vision for this is just like, honestly, like if I get paid to do this, great. But if I don't, I'm fine with it too because it's just fun. Yeah.
Well, I think it's great what you're doing. I hope that everyone around you is encouraging you to continue doing this because this is, I mean, it's something that you've wanted to do. You've been passionate and you are behind all of it. The sound, the visuals, makeup artists, all of it. So, you know.
My unofficial intern of my brother, Jack Conlu, who's also, I'll mention him. He's okay with his name being dropped in here because he probably won't listen. That's all right. You know, he's very much like, as far as the technical, he and I live together, so he's kind of my guinea pig when it comes to, like, let's say this, for example, where just trying to figure out how the hell do I make GarageBand work? What is this, Matt? What is going on here? So it, you know, it's fun.
Yeah.
Every journey has its stresses.
I'm very excited for you. I think that you should keep this going as long as you can. I think first of all, it only gets easier.
Yeah.
You're going to get a lot better at it. And I mean, just watching your first episodes to what you're doing now, I mean, you've already grown a lot and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You can tell that the people that you're interviewing are really enjoying the interview. So.
And so my high school reunion would have been this past year because of COVID. It was obviously canceled. And I talked to a couple other people, and I was just like, you know, if this reunion is to happen, I'm pretty sure I'll bring a notepad and a pen and just write down, okay, you have a great story. I'm going to talk to you later. Talk to you later. So you're on my list. And then, so you are part of my brother's graduating class of 2007 from Sunset High School. And
007.
There was a few people that I started reaching out to that is part of your class that I was like, hey, let's set up an interview. And some of them agreed, and then some of them I haven't heard back from. But my dad gave me this crazy idea. It's like, why don't you just do a series of where Sunset people are now?
It's a good idea. I mean, so far you've interviewed a good amount of Sunset people, so yeah.
I swear, if anyone from the class of 2020 is listening or watching, you guys are interesting. I just haven't got to it yet. You know, you got 2007, 2008. I got to think about 2009, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. As someone that is, you know, not a natural, just a born in Oregonian. You know, you are a U.S. citizen, but you are from Colombia. So, with COVID going on, how has Colombia's reaction been? Because we've talked, obviously, we talk a lot. So it's like, how was it seeing what's going on over there versus how we're handling it here?
I just want to put a disclaimer out that I'm an idiot, so everything I say, please take very lightly. I try to keep up with what's going on there, but it's hard because you can only get the news that you get from reading the paper, but it's different than just being there. But from what I hear from my family and from the news, I mean, the cases are much lower than they are here. I think Colombia did a really good job at kind of controlling it. Unfortunately, people do have to work there. It is really hard for people to just stay in quarantine for months and months at a time. Not as many people can work from home. So people did have to go out, and the cases spiked just like here when they did, but it was never as severe as it was here. The government kind of militarized the cities, like people couldn't leave between cities, they couldn't drive on the roads. They wanted to make sure that people weren't moving around too much, and that's a very touchy subject, you know, trying to control a population. But I don't know if it's the right thing or not, but that's what they did, and the cases definitely stayed much lower than most places. But Colombia does have, I think they have the highest amount of cases in South America besides Brazil. So yeah, Colombia got hit pretty good as well.
Yeah, and you know, you've traveled there with your wife ever. I don't know if you have like a routine of every time you visit, but I know you've gone there at least 4 or 5 times since you and your wife have been together. Is there, you know, like a place in mind that you've thought of immediately? Like, let's say this like small restaurant or the small like shop you like to go to that you're kind of worried about they might not make it, or?
Yeah. So all the neighborhoods so I'm from the capital, Bogota, and they have, your corner stores in every corner. And so a lot of those little stores had to find a way to get their food. I think the biggest issue was stocking up their shelves. And I think that was the hardest part for them. But yeah, the good thing about that system is that they have always provided the services of delivery. So they always delivered. And in the cases of like my mom would just call the bakery, and they would just bring her the food or whatever she needed, which was really good for her. And that kind of kept their business going. But I think they definitely suffered trying to restock their shelves because, the whole country was under shutdown for a long time. And I just want to clarify, I haven't been to Colombia since the pandemic. I've been trying to get there, but I haven't been able to because, first, we're just trying to be safe about it. And also, they closed the airports. You couldn't fly into the city. You couldn't fly anywhere. So the whole country was pretty much shut down for a good amount of months.
Yeah, and so, going back to my brother who loves watching Pokemon Go, like live stream Twitches, and he was watching one of this woman that is from, I think, the Netherlands, and I was like, this is going on right now, right? Like the stream, this live feed that we're watching, and he was like, yeah, because they did everything correctly, and then they actually eliminated COVID, so they're able to be out in public without masks and doing all that, and I was like, what are we doing?
Yeah, New Zealand, the prime minister, she showed videos of just a giant barbecue. Everyone's just hanging out with no masks or anything. I've seen a lot of footage of people just like at stadiums. I can't wait to have that again.
Yeah, especially with Oregon or Portland having their own MLS team. Mm-hmm. I've been to one Timbers game, and that was an environment. That was a thing to behold.
Yeah, I'm really optimistic about the way things are going, though. I think like everyone, we all got really depressed in the last month or two. I think after a year of COVID, we all kind of are ready to get out of this. So I was pretty down for a while, but seeing the numbers, seeing people getting vaccinated, I think I'm optimistic that people will get healthier, and we're going to be able to get out of this pretty soon.
So, yeah, unlike myself, where I was able to continue being in the office because they deemed me as an essential employee. Mm-hmm. And again, I work at a financing company, so they're, essential employee. It was just like they need someone there to make sure that the office can still flow. So I was able to go to the office. I was able to could live my life to just a little bit of a decline because of COVID. But, so I see my brother who was working from home, and he could feel a little shelter shocked, but he was learning things by himself. What did you learn about yourself during COVID and all this lockdown?
Ooh, that's a good question. I learned, actually, yeah, that's a good question. I've learned that I need a routine to be able to be more productive. The less I have going on in my life, the worse I get. So just general concepts of waking up early to shower, get changed, and then drive or walk to work. That concept by itself, not doing it every day, just made me lazier and lazier every day. And I learned that I need to be productive most of the day for me to be productive in all areas. COVID took everything away. We used to do sports all the time. I used to fly around. I used to I just had different activities, and everything got stopped. So it just made me super lazy.
Because I remember, I think, so you moved up from Bend to Portland, I think during this last summer-ish. Yeah. And I just remember you asking me, like, oh, hey, I saw that you're running. I want to get back into cardio and working out. Mm-hmm. Did you ever find alternative ways to work out outside of going to the gym?
Yeah, so I run with my dog or walk downtown with him every day, at least an hour every day. But it was hard to find something to do, especially during winter. The gym where I live, the gyms were shut down as well. So we try to do some routines at home, trying to do like push-up contests or just set-up contests
Yeah.
or just silly things like that. But it was hard to get any sort of rhythm going.
Yeah. So you're a married man. You have a dog, so you have people and animals that can keep you company.
Yeah.
Have you thought about like how you would have handled COVID if you were single?
Oh yeah, that would have. I mean, just the thought of, just having, not even just single, just having a roommate. If you just completely by yourself, it must be really challenging to be isolated from everyone. I know that even introverts that enjoy being alone are desperate to have some sort of human interaction. And on top of that, my dog, he just keeps you motivated to keep it alive.
Yeah.
So even if you're just lazy and don't want to get out of the house, that dog will force you to get out of the house, which is really healthy for you. I think that it's really useful or helpful to have an animal even outside of pandemic for just getting structure. Also, if you're depressed, I think having an animal is really helpful too.
Yeah, because they have those. Well, originally we were gonna make my brother's two cats be emotional support animals. I think that's the word for it. And so we got the paper. He got the paperwork and everything, but the leasing office never accepted them because they just never processed it. I guess maybe, but yeah, I think just because like animals are like or like let's say you use your dog for example, fluffy, very, doesn't bark a lot, which is nice.
Not at all.
Like I'd be open to a dog because running partner, but it's also like I don't like the barking.
Yeah, I do have a tortoise. It'd be funny to have an emotional support tortoise.
Oh yeah, that tortoise. It's good times. I just remember maybe when I was maybe a sophomore or maybe your freshman year of college, you came back to visit my brother and I and the whole family. You brought your tortoise, and then we put her in the freezer because it was hibernation.
Not in the freezer, in the fridge.
Fridge. And I was like, what if we mistake it for a sandwich? I was like, that's horrible.
I just want to clarify about that because, anyway, they need to for a certain amount of time a year. They need to be a specific temperature to hibernate, and my tortoise hibernates every year. So I don't do that anymore, but it's really healthy for them to try to have a similar cycle to what they would have in nature. So we try to hibernate her for a few weeks every year. So she's actually hibernating right now.
Where did having a tortoise come about?
That's funny. I was talking to my mom about this. When I came to the U.S. as a little kid, I always wanted to have a tortoise, and just want to clarify that a tortoise is different than a turtle. Oh. Turtles are in water. Tortoises are in the desert. And so I did not know this. And when I bought a tortoise, I was 16. I bought Becky. Her name is Becky. I got home and I'm like, well, they swim, right? And I just dropped her in a bucket of water and she just sunk to the bottom and you see bubbles coming up. And I'm like, I don't think they swim. So I pulled her out and obviously did some research and found out that they just need a lot of heat. They're just desert animals. So I learned really quickly, but I've now had her for 16 years.
Wow.
I bought her when she was 10, so she's 26 years old.
Wow. What's the normal lifespan?
From what I've read, in captivity, they live about 45 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's she was my number one gal for many, many years. I took her everywhere. Yeah.
There's just like, so, just taking your dog, for example, just looking at the dog straight into the eyes, it's just like, you're a cute son of a bitch. Exactly. And then now I figured, like, when I look at Becky, I'm just like, God, you're adorable. just adorable.
Yeah, they're interesting animals. I think they remind me of dinosaurs. She's very different and she doesn't need anything from me. So it's a really nice pet to have. Although it is cute to be a 16-year-old kid with a tortoise. Mm-hmm. Now I'm a 32-year-old man with a tortoise, and I don't know. That's kind of a weird place to be.
Well, your mom lived with you for a while before, I think, while you're in Bend. I think she stayed with you guys for a little bit, but it was probably nice for her to
She
have
loves
someone to
Becky.
take care of.
She asks about her and my dog more than anyone else. Yeah, she always wants me to send her pictures.
Oh yeah, that's what my mom always says. Oh, send me pictures of my grandkids, which is work code for the cats.
Oh, nice. It's cute.
Keoni Chats is proudly sponsored by Vibes Training. So Dylan Vibes is a good friend and former guest of the show. So after Dylan did his time as a trainer for the big name fitness companies, he wanted to challenge himself and become his own business. So being the always eager for a challenge man that he is, he got it, and I want to support him any way I can. So if you follow Vibes Training PDX on Instagram, then you'll see that Dylan's doing all these crazy workouts, and he's also doing them outside. With it being springtime, the sun is out, it's getting warmer. After you become a client with Dylan, you go to vibestraining.com, click on the blue button at the top of the screen, and then fill in the information fields to become a client. Then you could take all the workouts you see on his app outside. It's like, ooh. I mean, the gym is great because you have so many options, but Dylan provides you options where you can take the workout outside. So you go to, again, vibestraining.com, click on the blue button, and then after you get registered, you will be prompted to download his app where you can see a plethora of workouts ranging from 5 to 60 minutes. And some workouts require you to have no equipment. Some might require you to have dumbbells. Some might require you to have bands or barbell. But he's also incorporating workouts that require you to use items you could find around the house, like a backpack or step stool. I have 3 backpacks, maybe 4, I don't know, but I know that if I can get a workout with a backpack, I think that's the best. That's the most creative and the most fun way to do it. So go check out vibestraining.com, click on the blue button, get registered, become one of Vibes Training client, and have fun working out outside. Because working out in the gym, I'm never gonna knock that because I do that myself. Working out in the gym is one thing, but working out outside where you can feel the sun, feel the warmth, it's like nothing else. So vibestraining.com and get Vibes Fit today. Mention something about your free time being, flying, not like, flying an airplane, but you're a pilot. So
private pilot, yeah.
Private pilot. Now, I remember the announcement when you told my brother and I you wanted to be a pilot. So have you always enjoyed planes, or some sort of, young, is there like a toy that you remember having of a plane that you just kind of, you kind of latched onto? And
yeah, I did actually have a plane. It's a pretty big size plane, actually. Just a toy plane that I used to play around as a kid. But I always wanted to fly. I always wanted to be a pilot. And I remember when I was 11, my mom used to work for a family of pilots. And through her, I learned that if you're a pilot, you're gone for so many days a week, so many, overnight, and you never get to be home to see your kids or wife or partner or whatever. So that kind of ended my not desire, but I realized that I wanted to spend time with my family if I had a family. So I couldn't pick a career that took that away from me. So I always wanted to fly, and I found a way to do it without, I don't work as a pilot. I just did it as a hobby. So I got my pilot's license about a year, actually.
What do you remember was the most difficult part about getting registered and getting that beginning stages going?
The most difficult part about
just like, so, for me, when I putting this podcast as like an example, it's like, oh, okay, I knew I wanted to talk to people. I know I wanted to do this, but what's the first step? How do I get to, putting an interview together and doing all that? And that
so
kind
I
of
called
stopped me from like,
so I live in Bend. So in Bend, there aren't that many places to fly airplanes. So I called every single place that taught how to fly airplanes, but no one would take me because right now there's a shortage of pilots, and they want to get people that want to become commercial pilots, so for airlines.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want that. I want to just fly for fun whenever I want to. So no one would take me until I found this small company that took me under their wing, and they worked with my schedule, very flexible. I mean, I have a real job from 8 to 5, so I would wake up and fly at 5 a.m. in the morning for 2 hours with them. They would wait. I mean, I'm really grateful to them to be able to just work that flexible. And I wouldn't want to wake up at 5 a.m. to go work. And yet these instructors were waking up and meeting me, and we would fly every day, or not every day, but 3 times a week. And they were very flexible, so it really worked for me.
Do you remember how you felt when you first had your liftoff?
Oh, yeah, it was incredible. My first day, I get in the plane, we go through everything, and then we get to the runway, and he's like, okay, so you're going to take off. I'm like, well, what do you mean? He said, I'm like, I was convinced that the pilot sat on the left side, not the right side, because he was sitting on the right side. And he said, you're right, you are the pilot, you are sitting where you're supposed to be. I'm like, oh, what? He's like, no, yeah, we're gonna go. I'm like, shouldn't you be flying and then teaching me things? He's like, well, what's the best way to learn? You just have to dive into it. So he immediately just made me take off. I mean, obviously with his guidance and everything, because he has all the controls on his side too. And I just remember taking off, just freaking out. But that one was a special moment. But the most special moment, I think there were 2 other times that it's the highest high you could ever feel, is when you've flown enough with your instructor that they know that you can do it alone, and so they send you by yourself. And so then we flew, we landed, and then he got off the plane. He said, okay, now go do 3 touch and go. So you have to go around, land once, go around, land twice, 3 times, like by myself. He's like, yeah, go. I'm like, I was just freaking out. I'm like, oh man. So I get in the plane and get on the runway. I take off. Taking off is pretty easy. And coming around, and I'm just terrified. Like, I'm shaking. My voice, everything was just, I was like, man, this is life or death. I landed 3 times and I stopped, and I just could not, that feeling of being able to fly and land a plane by yourself the first time is pretty surreal. Yeah. And they have this pretty interesting tradition where they cut your shirt. And so, again, I'm paraphrasing this story, but back in the day, your instructor, the way the planes were, the student would be in front of you and the instructor would be behind you. And so, because it was so windy and they couldn't talk to each other, the instructor would pull on the shirt of the student behind them to kind of direct them where to go. And so once they graduated that they could fly on their own, they would cut a hole, because it would symbolize that they don't need to be told where to go anymore. It's like a symbol. And so they cut the shirt, and the instructor keeps the cloth of your shirt, and then you just walk around with a hole in your shirt. But he did that, and that was pretty symbolic too.
Yeah. And you'll be remembered forever because your shirt is going to be in his collection.
Yeah, exactly. It's like his little trophy.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So I work with about, I think, 3 or 4 pilots at my current job, and they just talk about like the testing that they had to go through to just get recertified, for example.
Jeez.
And one guy mentioned that there's like a free fall that you have to like figure out how to like correct it in midair, and it's just like, oh god, I'd freak out.
There are stalls. You have to stall the plane, so there's different types of stalls. Yeah, there's nothing like purposely stalling a plane. Like, one thing is by mistake and you try to correct it. You're purposely pushing the plane to its limit till the plane gives out. And when it gives out, the plane just drops straight down, and you start heading straight down. And you have to just muscle memory, know how to get that plane back to flying. And that's pretty terrifying, because if you are purposely trying to get the plane to fall or to give up, you have to keep it balanced, because if you don't, the plane will start going to the side, and then you'll start spinning out, which also you need to learn how to get out of spins. But that's one of the most terrifying things I've ever done, is spinning out of control and correcting the plane.
Yeah. Are you afraid a lot? Like, do you feel fear? Because from the whole time I've known you, you've always been such a cool guy. Like, you got a great personality, and then very either happy or like, either, let's say you're frustrated because soccer's not going the way you want it to. But I've never seen you scared. Do you feel fear?
That's a good question. I think so, but I seek it. I don't know. I like discomfort. I like pushing boundaries, and I like pushing others. Yeah. I really like to see what our limits are. I mean, we can live our lives the way we are, or we can try to explore the world, and it may not be comfortable. It may be kind of scary, but in the end, you now have an experience that other people don't.
That's true.
You flew with me.
No.
Oh no, we weren't able to fly.
Yeah, I think that was a plan the most recent time, but then there was a scheduling conflict. Yeah. So, we'll find you. Well, if anything, we'll have to. I will see if I can commandeer a plane unwillingly. So.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's been since I moved to Portland. It's been hard because of COVID, and also finding a place that I can fly without interfering with PDX is I don't want to mess with them.
Yeah. So. I know there's a Hillsborough flight school. And then
they have one too. And since I live downtown, there's the one out in Troutdale, and there's one in Vancouver as well that I should get a hold of to try to pick it up again.
Yeah. Do you fear you might get some rust and,
Yeah, I want to fly with the instructor again, just to get things going again before I fly by myself or fly anyone else.
Yeah. Then, I can't remember. Did you take your mom flying?
Oh, yeah. I've taken my mom multiple times. Yeah, I've taken a few people up, and it's terrifying for me more than anyone, because I know they're scared, but I'm responsible for their life. So, but honestly, people being in a tiny plane can be scary, but it's much safer than people think. You can glide for a long time as long as you know how to handle emergency situations. You have a pretty good chance. I mean, that's the only thing we practice. I have over 100 hours of constantly practicing emergency situations. That's all we do. So flying is boring. Just taking off, you go straight, you land. I mean, it's not much to it, but what I really enjoyed or got the most out of is learning all these emergency situations of dealing with different conditions, weather patterns, all these. It's pretty great.
And so obviously you took a car to get here, but like when you were flying, let's say you would do like X amount of hours flying, how much is it like you feel difficult like making that switch over back to driving, or just like I feel like I'm still on the plane?
Yeah, definitely. I remember flying and I would be late to work. I'm like, I gotta get to work. And so I would get in my car and start driving. I'm like, what are these lines on the ground? Why can't I just be wherever I want?
Yeah,
it's definitely you have to shift your mind for sure. And but yeah, I really enjoyed the mechanical aspect of these planes. You use everything: your hands, your brain, your feet, because you have two pedals. You have to be fully aware at all times. Mm-hmm. So, it's really fun.
Yeah, and then when you see these movies that have to do with like let's say a plane crash. Obviously, I don't want you in that situation, but there's one with Tom Hanks. He makes an emergency stop in the Hudson River. Mm. I can't remember the name of it. I'll probably just put a photo of it when I release the video.
Like Sully, Captain Sully? Or
yeah, Sully. So I'm not sure if you've seen that, but like when you hear about that, you're like, I think I could, hopefully I can handle the same way he does. Or obviously, like you can't say you can handle it better because they're still alive. So that's the main thing.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's kind of faux pas to talk about crashes when you're about to go fly, but in general, I think pilots that are pretty consistent, they do a good job at doing research and seeing how people dealt with emergency situations. And you can tell, I mean, recently we heard of that plane coming out of Colorado that the one of the engines caught on fire and it fell. I don't know if you saw, but you can listen to the audio of the pilot, and it is so incredible how the guy at first he lost an engine. He's mayday, we lost an engine, and he's really worried. And as he's talking to the tower, he realizes, okay, there's a procedure. I've been training my whole life for this. This is what I got to do. And then you can hear in his voice, just calm down, start following the procedures. And he turns the plane around. He does it's all muscle memory. He's done it for so long that it's repetition. Mm-hmm. And so we do pay attention to crashes like that just to make sure that what do we learn from that, or what went wrong, so that we are never put in that position. Mm-hmm. And then you hope that you never ever have to go into one of those situations.
And going back to switching your brain over from plane to car, you did do a road trip with Mr. Nick Moses back in the day. Did you have any kind of thoughts that kind of I'm not sure I'm comfortable with this because I don't know what could happen in the road, I'm away from home? What were some of those, if you remember? Obviously it was a while ago, but what were some of your reserves, I think would be the right word for it? Reservations prior to taking that trip?
The biggest reservation of all was that I was undocumented. So I was terrified of getting pulled over and doing something, or getting, I remember driving through Texas close to the border, and we would pass ICE buses filled with immigrants that are going to be deported. And that, I was 18, I was a kid, and I didn't know anything. I'm like, man, that could be me in there. So that was kind of scary, but I was always looking for adventure. So Nick and I just found places to stay. We just say, we've been driving till 11 p.m. We can't see anything. Let's just put a tent here and sleep and see what happens. We were not very worried at all besides that.
Yeah. Okay. So you didn't find any, you didn't go motel hopping. You guys slept in a tent?
So we reached out to people we knew in different states. If we knew them, they would let us stay with them. There were a few cases where we couldn't even find our campsite, and it was really scary. We went to Roswell, where all the aliens have landed, and we could not find our site. And I remember it was so late, we were exhausted, and I called my mom. Back then we had flip phones. We didn't have GPS. We just had giant maps and flip phones. And I called my mom. I'm like, I don't know what to do. We can't find our place. We don't have anywhere to stay. She's like, David, I will pay for your motel. Just get a motel and stay there. So there were situations, a few like that we just needed to find somewhere, and we just stayed in motels. Okay. 3 times, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you two not kill each other?
It's all because of Nick. Nick is the most patient man on earth. He is so reserved and quiet. I think that we listened to metal the whole time. We also talked about the most ridiculous things just to pass the time. I mean, at one point we started talking about dirt, how nice piles of dirt looked because we were so bored. But I'm sure I got into his nerves a weekend or the first day in. I mean, I think mostly is him being patient with me. Yeah.
I know I had this, I probably shared it with you, this crazy idea I had coming out of high school. I was like, I'm going to go on a road trip. Basically I had you and Nick's, I had, trip in mind. I was like, I'm going to go all the northern states, all the way to New York. And then we go all the southern states, heading back to Oregon.
Yeah.
I was like, that's a really long trip.
It's a lot. We put 10,000 miles in that car, And 3 days into our road trip, um, I, our, we got a rock chip in our window or in our windshield and just cracked the entire windshield. Yeah, we had car problems the whole way. Yeah.
What were some moments where you're just like, let's turn around? But you didn't, obviously. But what were some of those moments?
We got stuck in North Carolina at this campsite. Our car wouldn't start. It just wouldn't start for anything in the world. And at this point, we had so many problems with the gears, with the windshield, with just a bunch of other stuff that I was like, I don't know, we're going to have to leave the car here and fly back or something. But people in North Carolina were so nice to us. One guy towed our car to one of his friends' mechanics who wasn't open. They closed on Sundays, and we were driving on Sunday. And it's like, hey, these two kids from Oregon are driving, and their car broke down. Can you open your shop and help them out? So the guy called in his assistant. They opened the shop for us, and they're like, your starter, you need a new starter. It's gonna take a while to install, but we'll do it for you guys. And it was so nice. They changed it for us, and while we waited, they made barbecue outside of their shop, and they just fed us and hung out
barbecue, right?
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, the nicest people. And then at the end, they only charged us for parts. It's we met a lot of nice people throughout our trip. But yeah, that was one of the times we're so fed up.
Yeah. You're like, well, I miss my own bed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So would you say that the North Carolinians were they probably the nicest type of people you met in this journey, or is there someone else that another state you didn't think would be that great as it is, or vice versa?
We met, I would say, people from the South were the nicest people. Mm-hmm. But everywhere we went, we met. I mean, it almost feels like going to different countries. It's just a new perspective everywhere you go. But everyone seemed pretty nice. The only place that I honestly, and I think Nick can back me up on this, the only place that we did not have a good time was in Idaho.
Really?
We were in southern Idaho, though, and I know that northern Idaho is beautiful, but we were not treated very kindly in southern Idaho. And South Dakota. Don't ever go to South Dakota. Sorry, South Dakotans, but
sorry, Idahoans.
Yeah.
Idahoans,
yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
In the beginning, when you said that you were kind of worried about you being undocumented, when you became an official U.S. citizen, how did that feel? Because now you have dual citizenship. I believe that's what you would have nowadays with both Colombia and USA. Mm-hmm. So when you became a U.S. citizen, now what kind of relief did you feel?
So before you become a U.S. citizen, if you're undocumented, you have to become a U.S. legal resident. So we waited for 11 years undocumented. My mom and I, for 11 years, were really worried about me getting deported or her getting deported. I mean, we had a plan. What would happen if she got deported, or what would happen if I got deported? I would, if she got deported, she would say she doesn't have kids, so that I would stay in this country, sort of thing, which is really sad to think about now. We had a plan, so we're always under fear. You can't drive, you can't work, you can't go to school, you can't even get a fishing license if you're undocumented. So I was missing out on a lot in life. It wasn't until I turned 22 that I became a legal resident. And that changed my entire world. So I was finally able to get a job. I was finally able to legally do most things that, I don't know, I was brought here when I was 11, and I still didn't have the opportunities to do a lot of things because of that, including flying, So, it was my life has completely changed since that day. And then once you become legal, you have to be in this country for not here, but you have to be legal resident for 5 years before you can get your citizenship. Yeah.
So previously, I had one of your classmates, Dominique Wynn, as my guest, and he mentioned that when he first started school, like William Walker, elementary school, he got made fun of because of his ethnicity, and that he didn't really know how to react because he's just like, I don't know, these kids are giving me attention. Do I just roll with it? Kind of mentality. Obviously, he knows now, that was never okay. That should not have happened. What were some of those kind of remarks you received being not just a new person in elementary school, but just also being an undocumented person?
Yeah, so I was always ashamed to tell anyone I was undocumented. I didn't want anyone to know because they were going to treat me even worse. But yeah, there was a lot of bullying. I didn't speak English, so I would always get in trouble because people would tell me to say things in English, and I would say them to the teacher without knowing, and then suddenly I'm sitting in suspension, and I didn't even know that it was suspension, sort of thing. But people would tell me, go back to your country. People would tell me, where are you from? The funny one is, where are you from? And I would say Colombia, and they'd be like, what part of Mexico is that in? Like, they're just, they're kids, but yeah, it was always hard. I think what was hardest is when I finally, about 14, I said, screw it, I'm just going to let people know I'm undocumented. It's not my fault. It's not, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm a good student. I don't commit crimes. I'm doing me. And I started collecting signatures for people I think now it's called DACA, but it was supposed to be the DREAM Act. It's supposed to help students that are doing really well, that were brought here as kids, to find them a path for citizenship, right? So I started collecting signatures in high school for this, and I would go up to my friends and I'd be like, hey, would you sign this? It's for, what I just explained. And it was quite the realization to see that they would be against it. They would say, I'm not okay with undocumented immigrants. And I would say, but I'm an undocumented immigrant. And a lot of people didn't know that. Mm-hmm. So it was really hard, but it was really good to see what kind of people they really were. Mm-hmm. And some of them never talked to me again once they knew. Some of them would say, well, no, but you're different. And I'm not different than other undocumented immigrants.
It's like, I'm just different because you know me.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And so, but I did get a lot of people that I was really close to obviously signed with no hesitation. The whole concept is unfortunate, but if you're a kid, you don't get a say of where you go or where you're born. So I feel like if you're a good citizen, why not?
Did your mom ever tell you why she wanted to take you and her to Oregon versus, like, let's say California or any other state?
Yeah, so we had to leave the country because, and Colombia has a negative stereotype because of what happened in the 90s and early or late 80s. And that's when we left, actually. So fortunately, we had family here in Oregon that had been here for decades. They didn't come here for better life or whatever. They just wanted to come here and work, and they did, and they had a pretty good job. And when things went down in the 90s, my family looked for a way out to give their kids a better life. And my mom, we were invited to come to Oregon. That's the only reason why we're in Oregon, but yeah, Oregon's awesome.
So, like the 90s, Colombia had cocaine and then drugs, and and also Scarface probably kind of reinforced some of that stereotypes. When you finally accepted the fact that, like, okay, I'm undocumented, I'm from Colombia, how much of those stereotypes did you kind of turn into? Did you kind of like go with just to like freak kids out or something like that?
what kind of stereotypes I started following in, like,
Yeah, like once like you were like openly saying like, "Oh, I'm undocumented, I'm Colombian,"
yeah.
and then for me, I mean, just because in the '90s I was still, you're a little bit older than me, but I still remember, just watching Scarface, for example, and seeing all the drugs and all that violence. Did you like let's say just name if you can name a couple of stereotypes you remember hearing, and B, were you ever like, I'm gonna have this bravado of like a tough guy because I'm Colombian, and then I'm gonna turn into these stereotypes to
Yeah.
freak some kids out? Keoni Chats is proudly sponsored by Cove Hard Yerba Mate. Josh Mackler is a good friend and former guest of the show. So after his episode, he was very gracious enough to send me a case of all 4 flavors that he offers to people, which is a orange colada, a mojito, a berry flavor, and a lemonade. So after I tried each one of those flavors, I still think berry is my favorite just because I love the citrusy. I've always been like a kind of a fruity, tarty person. So I told a few friends. He gave me enough. Again, is very gracious of him to give some samples out to some people, and they loved it. So I was very happy to help spread the word of Cove. So when it came to afterwards, Josh he told me that he wanted to give me a discount code, and that just blew my mind because this is my first time ever having a discount code. And it's for my friend's company, and he's so gracious enough to give anyone that uses the discount code Keoni Chats Cove, KeoniChatsKove, 25% off their total purchase at checkout. I was like, whoa, 25%? That's so kind. So, I don't do these things to seek any kind of reward for myself. I just do it because I want to. I love it. I love helping people, and I love helping this company and help spread their name. So go to hardyyerbamate.com, HARDYERBAMATE. You have to be 21 and over to purchase any alcohol from Cove and Josh Mackler. So after you've looked around, selected what you like, use the discount code Keoni Chats Cove, KeoniChatsKove for 25% off your total purchase. Again, it must be 21 and over to purchase any alcohol from Cove and Josh Mackler. And please drink responsibly.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard all the stereotypes that you see in movies. I mean, everyone thinks that Colombians are just snorting coke all day, every day. And I expect that from teenagers. It was always weird to hear it from adults. I mean, I remember with my mom, we went to look at a house to rent, and the guy showing us the place, he asked us where we were from, and I said Colombia, and then he started going off about how Colombia, there's all the drugs and the guerrillas and the cartels and all this, and I'm like, they're like, that's what you're known for, right? I'm like, okay, man, but also Colombia is known for coffee, and we export flowers more than anywhere else. I mean, we have other things that we're known for. So yeah, that was the hardest part, is to hear from adults that actually believe that, as opposed to just heard it from their parents.
Yeah. And I remember I had an opportunity to go to Mexico, or a city in Mexico for the summer for school, and basically get like 2 years of Spanish done in like 6 months or something like that. And I told my mom about it, and she's like, "Oh no, son, it's dangerous." And then I told the teacher like basically what she said. She's like, "It's dangerous, yes, but so is Detroit."
In Colombia for a year, and I got my citizenship. I'm invited a bunch of friends to come visit, and I made it very clear to them, there's dangers about being in this country, but there's danger everywhere, like you say. But also Colombia has so much more to offer that you will have a life-changing experience coming here. And it may not be that everything is incredible, but it's just so experiencing a different culture and the warmth that our culture gives you. It would be life-changing to you. And four of my friends went to Colombia and spent 2 weeks there, and they had a blast. I mean, they got to understand me in a different way. They got to understand my culture, but they had an unbelievable experience that, again, it's not that it was all luxurious, because it wasn't, but it was definitely, I think, life-changing for them to experience a different country, and very different than here.
And you got to go to a World Cup match, I believe. Was that in Colombia also, or somewhere else?
No. So that was another dream that I had, was to, I'm obsessed with soccer. And so I backpacked for a month in Brazil and followed the Colombian soccer team. And I saw a few other matches as well. That was, I mean, I remember just being at that stadium and watching Colombia score and win game after game. It was surreal to me. It was one of the best experiences of my life, definitely.
I remember you showed me a video. I don't know if you took it or like it was just another video at the same match where someone had a paper airplane and they threw it from the top of the stands.
Funny, yeah. I didn't do it, but yeah, someone threw a paper airplane for the very top of the stadium. Yeah. And it flew all the way to the middle of the field, and the crowd went crazy. It was pretty good. Yeah.
You've been to some Timbers games, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. How would you? Obviously, you can't really truly compare, because in America, it's the NFL or American football versus soccer does have some notoriety, but not as high as the NFL, or unfortunately not as high as like baseball, for example. Mm-hmm. So when you went to a Timbers game, now did you have any kind of reminiscence of like when you went to any, not like the World Soccer, but just like any kind of like the International Soccer League?
Yeah, well, first, club soccer is always going to be better than when countries play, because they train every day for a year together, or not a year, but in a year, they're always practicing together. But the atmosphere in Portland is tremendous compared to other places that I've been in the U.S. Yeah, it's really good to see people be so excited about soccer for a place that doesn't care about soccer, because most of the U.S. doesn't really care.
Yeah. And when they do care, it's because of something like prominent. It's not like a natural organic fanship. Mm-hmm. Like when the women's soccer team, when they went to the nationals, and then Megan Rapinoe, Megan Rapinoe, mm-hmm. and how much she was outspoken and how she brought some attention to women's soccer. Mm-hmm. I think it would be nice to like have the natural attention given to him versus just like, oh, there's let's say an openly gay player on the Timbers, let's go watch him and support.
Right. I think that's one thing that I think is really good in all sports, is that it's so inclusive. As long as you're good at what you do, we don't care who or what you are. Just pass me the ball. Yeah. I think most sports, it's all about being a good team player.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. And I know that you're not a big fan of soccer.
I'll watch it. I'll see what.
It's fair.
I'll try paying attention.
No, that's fair. I mean, you didn't grow up with it. It makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting because Americans always make fun of soccer, or not all Americans, but some Americans I hear making fun of soccer or their players, or how it's not a real sport. And yet, more people watch soccer in the world than football. I mean, every weekend, more people are watching a soccer game than people watch the Super Bowl. One day a year, they're watching that many. Way more people are watching every weekend than one day in the Super Bowl.
I remember there are times when you were living in Corvallis for school, maybe a little bit after school, or, we, my brother and I would come over, we, go tear up the town to some extent, and then the next day you are up at like 6 a.m. watching a soccer game. Yeah. How? I was
very obsessed.
That kind of fandom. Now, how was it to maintain that? Because obviously the time zones, that's... Oof.
Yeah, it's rough. You got to do what you got to do for your team, right? I mean, you get a lot of hate for being a fan of, um,
New England Patriots.
yeah, the Patriots.
Yeah.
But no matter what, you're always going to be a fan, you know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I got too obsessed for a while. It's hard with work and other things that pop up, but yeah, I mean, if soccer's on, I don't care what team it is, I'm gonna watch it.
Mm-hmm. So, do you ever just like imagine yourself on that field with those players? Because I know when I watched, let's say, football, I was playing football, I was like, okay, if I was a linebacker, I'd read it this way and then I tackle it that way. This guy did it fine, I guess, but if it was me, but you ever had this was me moment?
Yeah, I mean, I've played soccer my whole life, and I never got better. I think, yeah, the more I play, the worse I get. But you always have that dream of playing with, and in the field with, top team, Barcelona or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But then at my age, I realized what incredible talent it requires to get there, that you just don't have a chance. I mean, I could train for 10 years straight and I wouldn't even make it to the first league that Barcelona has. I mean, their talent is ridiculous. And now at my age, it's more of, I've played enough and watched so much soccer that I think I understand the theory way more. So when you watch, some club teams are filled with 20-year-old kids, they may be really talented, but the theory is not there. Mm-hmm. So it is interesting to see, like, you will develop, you will come up with this mentality that only comes with experience.
So let's say maybe in the next 5 or so years you have a kid. Now, how are you looking forward to the idea of like sharing all that wisdom down about soccer and just your life to that kid? Or are you just like, I'm not ready to think about kids yet?
Well, we don't want kids.
Okay.
That may change, but so now we don't want kids. I've always worried about that I am going to be really disappointed in my kids if they don't end up loving soccer. No, I get that people have different interests, and this world is changing so quickly that what I thought was the hip thing to do now is definitely for old people like us. Yeah. So I hope that if I have kids that they will definitely be into soccer.
Yeah. And sports can be a form of religion for some people, and for you, I've never came across coming to your house or just me and your mom that, and I never took you as a religious. Are you a religious person?
I grew up very religious. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not religious anymore, but I grew up very religious. But soccer is definitely quite up there.
Yeah, me. And it's. I've had this conversation with a few people about religion, and I know with being Colombia being there, I think it would be a very religious like community down in Colombia.
Like 90% Catholic. Yeah, they're all Catholic.
Yeah, it's just like it's hard sometimes to maintain that kind of lifestyle to like believe, and also with everything going on in the world right now, it's like how do you keep processing that with religion and whatnot.
Yeah, I grew up. So it's interesting because as I said, Colombia is predominantly Catholic, but my family is all Christian. So I was one of the only ones in my world that was Christian and not Catholic. So that was already challenging enough because Catholics would not appreciate our views. And then I came here and I thought that, everyone needed to be converted. As an 11-year-old kid, I thought everyone needed to believe what I believed. Mm-hmm. And as I got older, I realized how narrow-minded that is. And I realized that everyone has a different journey. Everyone has a different experience in life. And we can't force people to believe one way of life.
Yeah.
And I grew out of that when I went to college.
Yeah, and then we came up. We covered your life so far and spurts, and with you being an illegal immigrant for a long time until like 22, and then with religion kind of being in the back window or back seeing in the rearview mirror, how'd you feel about 2016 to 2020 during? I mean, we don't have to go too in depth, but just as the political kind of realm was, very hostile, very much against anyone of our skin color. How did you feel about those 4 years?
So luckily, I was living in Colombia in 2016 when the unmentionable became president. We saw the riots and all the protests that happened afterwards. So two things. First, as terrible for my perspective, and again, I'm an idiot, so don't pay attention to me, but as terrible as the 4 years were, the best thing that came out of that is that it made every person that hated politics pay attention to our leaders. Mm-hmm. People who had never, ever cared about policy, never cared about who their senators or nothing, are now suddenly paying attention because every move mattered at that point. So the one thing that came out of I'm not saying it was all bad, but the most positive thing in my perspective that came out of that is that it made everyone aware that they need to pay attention to this. We all need to worry more. The second thing that is a bummer is that even though I was undocumented, I always felt like I had a community that accepted me and loved me for me and didn't care that I was undocumented. And again, I was already a U.S. citizen when he was president, but those 4 years, I really felt unwelcomed. And it wasn't that, you find out that people that really like you really like them too. And it doesn't add up. It doesn't add up that someone that has so much hate for people like me, they also like me. I mean, it just didn't add up. Yeah. And so I definitely felt unwelcomed. I was a real pessimist the whole time. I didn't even think he was going to get voted out, and he almost didn't. I mean, yes, he lost by a big margin, but the fact that almost half the country voted for him that were eligible to vote says enough that it still makes me feel a little unwelcomed.
Yeah, because when I honestly, I thought it was a joke that was actually happening, and then when it all started the numbers kind of rolling in, I was just like, wait, what? Yeah. What? This guy who's been on TV and has all these other companies is now the head honcho? This feels weird. And then going back to what you said about people starting to pay attention, if we were to have this conversation 2015 or something like that, I would just be like, politics, just
right.
I don't know, the things that help us have a somewhat structured environment or just society. But when all that happened, I'm still learning about politics, and it's nice that actually I can have this conversation with you about it, because I'm also, you probably know more than I do when it comes to how Trump ran his, I'm sorry, the aforementioned, sorry, we'll redact that. So it was shocking to see all the responses.
Yeah, and one thing that I've learned paying attention to this, and maybe I pay attention to it too much, that I feel like a lot of people like me were affected by just getting too sucked into this soap opera. You realize that all the leaders are just in it for their own interests. So this country is so divided. You're either right or left, but in itself, the political parties are all super corrupt. And so I don't agree with, just because I hate them doesn't mean I agree with all the policies on the left side. Because I don't. I am I criticize them all the time, and I have these conversations with my wife all the time. How I don't understand why the left does certain things. So it's really good to question that. And now that people are paying attention, you should always be questioning. Now that we are aware and understand it a little more, we should always be questioning our leaders and hold them accountable for everything. I mean, why would you let your leaders, I mean, they're here to serve us, right? That's their job.
Yeah. Now, when you think of Portland, you think of, at least for me, it was all the way up to like, maybe this last like year or so, where I think of Portland, I think of, let's say the waterfront area where it's like beautiful flowers, calmness, people sitting down, relaxing. I never took it as a town that would have like 100+ day protest and movement for Black Lives Matter, and then the feds come in. How'd you feel seeing your town go through all that?
Yeah, I moved in right in the middle of all that, so it was quite the shock to see everything. But I learned that it does look sad because you put the pandemic, and before the riots or protests, everything was boarded up because they just needed to close their businesses, and they didn't want people to break in, so they just put the boards. So that already looked bad. And then people started protesting and breaking stuff, and so the accumulation of all of that made it look ugly. I mean, it's sad to go downtown and see all that. I think people have every right to protest. I think that you should protest. Obviously, no one wants looting. No matter what side you're on, you shouldn't be looting. But the excessive force also doesn't help either.
Yeah. It's one of those like chicken or the egg kind of scenarios. It's like, okay, you're doing this protest because of what happened, and it's great, but then the police have to like make sure it stays civilized, but then also something else can happen. So it's a big domino effect slash chicken and the egg. Yeah. I'm trying to put too many metaphors.
Yeah, no, I live downtown, and I am in the middle of it all. So every night we heard either the cops or we heard the protesters. And from my view, and again, it's just my perspective, it wasn't as intense as the media made it out to be. I would walk because I walk my dog all the time, and so we'd walk 9-10 p.m. at night. We'd be walking downtown, we'd do a loop. We'd see in one little block the protesters and just doing their chants and their songs and whatnot peacefully. And we go home, and then you put Fox News or other media, and they are front news. Portland is in chaos, is burning down, and it's not the case. It's just one block. And so it's definitely interesting to see the two worlds.
Yeah. And I mean, it probably was Fox News. You know how they are. Just spin it. So you're a very outspoken man. You're very outspoken. You share what's on your mind. How do you process things that you have trouble sharing? Like, who do you go to? Obviously you have your wife, but then, who do you go to just kind of get yourself at mental ease?
That's a good question. Yeah, I used to use my dad a lot. My dad was the most optimistic person I had ever known. And every single time I was frustrated or had anything, I would just call him and he would answer, and I would just rant and just go off about it. And he would always just listen to me. And even if he didn't understand it, because he didn't live here, so he had no idea what it was like to live here. And so he was always there to listen to me no matter what. But yeah, my wife listens a lot to me. She's very patient. And my dog, I talk to my dog a lot like a crazy person.
Yeah.
That helps. My mom definitely helps too. My mom also has strong opinions like I do. So then we both get heated about the same thing. And we both get excited about the same thing. So when I need that energy, then I call her for that. I'm like, Mom, be mad with me about this.
Feel my pain.
Exactly. Yeah, she understands that for sure.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. And So how much, because I know what your wife does for work, how much of, you know, being able to know that she has this kind of experiences that talks, where she talks to people about their lives and how they're able to kind of go from point A to point B, how much of her work you see her do, because you're also working from home, does that kind of like sponge off on you? It's like, okay, I think I can. Are you trying to work on being more open, or are you still like?
I consider myself open-minded. I mean, I have my strong opinions, but it doesn't mean that I think that my opinions are always right. Like, I am willing to. I'm always out for having a dialogue. If I say something and people don't like it, please let me know, and let me know why I'm wrong, and I have no problem with that. And I like that. I like if people call me out. I don't think it's like, what's the point of me saying I'm always right and I don't want to hear anyone else's perspective? I mean, you wanna learn, and yeah, my wife has taught me a lot about, because she grew up very differently than I did, and she went to school in San Francisco, very hippie, very open-minded, and I've been very lucky to learn a lot about the world and being nice to people through her, for sure.
Yeah. So, people, if you can, if you're listening to this, you hear a helicopter going on. So, apologize for that. And it's gone. Okay, cool. What brings you the most joy? Obviously, let's put your wife, your Becky, and then your dog, and your family and friends. Let's put all those to the side. What else? What is the main thing that you wake up in the morning, you're like, it's going to be a great day because of XYZ? What are those XYZ?
You can take everything away from me. I love being with people. I really, really value communities. I understand and respect communities. And if I get to go see a friend one day, I am on a high all day waiting to see that friend. And then when I leave, I'm still on a high that I got to see them. I think that before the pandemic, I was constantly trying to get everyone together, because there's nothing like having everyone over and you say some stupid joke and everyone just laughs. Like, bringing joy to people as a community, that specific moment. I mean, yeah, I think that's what I live for. I can't wait to be able to hang out with you all again on a daily basis and just laugh about stupid stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly what I remember you as when I see you, like, in Corvallis, at a house party that you host. It's just, you're the life of it. You're in the center. You're talking to everyone from room A to room Z and just making sure everyone's comfortable. So that's why, like, I was wondering, because with pandemic, we've seen each other a fair amount. Now that you live like right up the street or right down the street, that was probably like that's not like, just I was just thinking about you the whole time. It's like, this gotta be rough for David.
Yeah, it's been pretty rough, honestly. Obviously, no secret, I'm an extrovert, and
me too.
I get my energy from people, and I miss that. But again, I've been so safe about COVID that I had to prioritize that over anything else. So many times I look at my wife and I'm like, I just need to see somebody. I just need to. I need to. And we either through Skype or whatever it is. But yeah, I want everyone to have a good time. That's all. I really just want to bring that joy from people, and I hope that soon enough we can do that.
Did you have fun recording your first podcast?
Oh yeah, it's been a blast.
There it is. Yeah. So I like to end my interviews with asking a couple questions. Wow, I shot myself. Asking a couple questions from this packet of 170 hypothetical questions. It's just, why not? Why not? Let's have some fun with it. Well, my first question was going to be about what sport you would want to compete in professionally, but I think we all know the answer to that one. So let's jump to, if you had to join the circus, what type of performer would you be?
That's a good question. I mean, being shot out of a cannon would be awesome. I would love to bounce off nets and stuff. Yeah, I think definitely like a gymnast sort of performer.
Yeah, I
What would you
can
do?
see that. I can see that. You just like, you feel like you're a bird for a few seconds.
Yeah.
Um, I love working out. I love being strong. I was like, oh, maybe I'll be a strong man. Maybe. I think that because honestly, I can't think of any other circus performer. Bearded
Juggler.
lady?
You can be a juggler. You could be one of those motorcyclists that spin in a circle.
It's true. It's true. I tend to like.
Tightrope walker.
I'm a little bit too like. I think if I were to put like, the fear of like bodily harm to the side, yeah, okay, motorcycle sounds fun actually. Just zip around in a big old spear.
What about a magician?
That's just, that's true. I mean, I've been watching WandaVision, so that's magic. Okay, all right, I'll be a magician. You convinced me, sir. You convinced me. Okay. Let's do this one. If you could body swap with anyone for 24 hours, who would you choose?
Body swap?
Yeah, so like a Freaky Friday thing where like you're, let's say we swap positions, you or me, and I was you, for example.
Do I get to keep their brain? Like, can I think with their brain?
Yeah.
I would do Elon Musk. That guy is out of this world. He's got to be an alien. And his brain works so interesting. And plus, I'd be a billionaire for a year, for a day, you know?
That's true. That's true. And plus, you can also use Elon Musk's money to pay off your student loans.
That's true.
You already got a new car, so
yeah, I would use his money for a lot of things, but also I would want to know all the secrets of the world.
That's true. Wasn't he building a spaceship? At one point he was?
He's still doing that.
He's still doing that?
Yeah.
Oh, that Elon. That
Yeah,
crazy.
He does a lot of things, yeah.
Crazy guy. I would say Ryan Reynolds.
He's awesome.
Yeah. Let's just
Yeah.
say, he's a funny guy. He's like charming, good looking, and plus, six pack for days. let's get some of that.
Yeah, I get that.
So David, I know you're not big into social media, so what is the best way for people to get a hold of you if they want to just have a chat with you?
That's a good question. I don't have it, so they probably have to reach out to you.
Yes,
or
talk to me, guys.
To get a hold of me, or I can provide an email address. I don't know.
Let's say someone sends a direct message to you after hearing this episode. Are you responsive when it comes to?
Oh man, that's so terrible. The other day I looked at my phone and I had 38 unread text messages.
Oh wow.
I am the worst at texting people back because again, I just want to be with people. I don't care about looking at a screen.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, if it's from this podcast, I'll definitely get back to people.
Oh, perfect. Look at that. I got the perfect plug. This is great.
Of course.
This is great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sticking around until the end of the episode. If you like what you heard or watch and would like more episodes from Keoni Chats, the show can be found on all podcast platforms and YouTube under Keoni Chats. If you want to keep in the loop on other creative content releases, you can follow KC Media on Instagram and Twitter under KC Media 13. And then on Facebook, it'll be under Conlu K Media. So if you'd like to be a guest, email me at kcmedia13@yahoo.com. Tell me your story. I'd love to get you on the show. So until the next episode, everyone, please take care.